Cutting into your program once again, where Martin County Sheriff William Snyder now giving an update, as you see right here live on that situation.
In this case, and we're going to do everything we can to try to fill in some of the gaps of what we had this morning. I have to start off to remind everybody that this is still an ongoing investigation. Some of the answers to what exactly happened will take us some time to determine. But since we were out there this morning, a couple of things that I can release that is new. We have confirmed the death of Fernandez Jones, who was born on August 34th, 1964. Jaden Jones, his son, 9 years old, born in 2006. And Willis Bell, who was born in 45. We're still not clear on that relationship. I have his stepfather or father-in-law, so we're trying to determine exactly what that relationship was. Let me go back over the timeline. I think that's been one of the big questions. When did we first know about this, and then what was law enforcement's response? From what we can determine right now, right at about 9:15, a neighbor of our victims came to Sanskrit Park to look for the pickup truck. The boaters had gone out ostensibly to go fishing, and as the family relates to us, it was not their habit to stay out late, or certainly not into dark. So they had apparently become concerned, and a neighbor went and found the pickup truck and called us. The neighbor took it upon herself to give us a call. We got the original call, if I'm reading my notes correctly, at 9:29. And a short time later, using what information we had, we attempted to ping the phone that should have been out there. And we can talk about that later. At 9:46, our Marine Patrol unit was notified. At 9:52, Coast Guard was notified and subsequently launched two boats. At 9:52, two Martin County Sheriff's Office boats were in the water in the search. At 10:17, Lake Worth Coast Guard was notified of an overdue boater. At 10:40, the St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office put their helicopter in the air over our coastline. At 10:44, the Freshwater Commission put two officers in one boat into the water. By 11:03, the U.S. Coast Guard had two boats heading to our area, one from Fort Pierce, one from Lake Worth. By 12:45, Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office dispatched an air unit and had a helicopter overhead. Despite our efforts and despite the search, which was made extremely difficult because of the dark, it was dark last night, it was very rough out there. And from what we learned later, the boat was underwater almost immediately. There was they did not find any sign of the boat or the people on the boat. Earlier this morning, I think we released that time, we did find two bodies and then a third body, two bodies on shore, and then a third body, and then our helicopter pilot flying the coast found our sole survivor who flagged us down. His statement is really very simple. They went fishing sometime yesterday morning. They got outside to about 80 foot of water and turned the engine off to go fishing, and the boat swamped immediately. Filled up, the boat did not turn over, appears to have stayed flat and below the surface. Our survivor and the other three on the boat clung to the boat for a period of time, and one by one were not able to stay with the boat and ultimately drowned. Our survivor does say that he had the 9-year-old in a life jacket and held on to him for as long as he could, but eventually was not able to continue doing so, and the child drowned. And that is an overview of what we have. I'd be glad to try to answer as many questions as I can.
Sheriff, earlier there was talk about the boat having capsized and been found, but now you're saying the boat went underwater. Has that boat been found?
The boat didn't capsize. In other words, it didn't turn over.
Okay.
It stayed level but underwater, and the boat has been recovered.
And where was it found?
Where was it found exactly?
It's approximately a mile and a half south of the St. Lucia line.
A mile and a half south of St. Lucia.
It had a,
There was no ping.
I'm going to do this. I'll move across from left to right, and we'll get everybody's questions. Janet?
sure, Sheriff, it had a dark hull paint underneath it. Can you explain how that would make it even more difficult for you?
Well, yeah, there was really nothing in the rescuer's favor or the victim's favor that night. It was a very dark, and the boat was dark, and it was just not visible. Not to get too technical, but there were FLIR units up there, forward-looking infrared, on the PBSO helicopter, and what that's looking for is heat. There would have been no heat coming from that scene. So they could have flown right over that and not seen it. I think you.
Yeah, so there was no ping. There was nothing, no technology from it.
Well, there was, Detective, what was the last ping? Was it 8:45, just before the boat probably went under? Looking at the cell phone towers, it did show as an active phone, but right after that, nothing. So the boat was above water with a working cell phone sometime before 9 a.m. and then that was opposite after that, which is very consistent with what the survivor said. As soon as the cell phones hit the salt water, we have a lot of experience with that. They're gone.
Can you describe the conditions yesterday?
It was rough. It was probably 4 foot and above seas.
Can you explain one by one, or did he explain who died and in what order, or any of that?
I think he did, but I'm going to leave that to FWC to talk about.
Sure.
I have a question. Can you speak to the location from where either the boat ended up coming versus where the bodies ended up washing ashore versus where?
They were all within a mile or two of each other, right there.
And then you said that the infrared, I was curious, would it have captured, let's say, them in the water? If it was looking for light or was looking for heat?
Yeah, if you got right over it at the right elevation, you would have.
So it's just a matter of being at the right elevation.
Yeah, it's a big ocean.
Sheriff, you said that they found 2 bodies on shore, then a third body. Can you tell us which 2 bodies were identified on shore?
Well, we had go ahead.
The father and the son
Were together on
were
shore?
found approximately 500 yards apart from each other, south of the St. Lucie Inlet on the shoreline. The elderly gentleman, Mr. Bell, was found approximately 200 yards south of the House of Refuge. The remaining, or the sole survivor, was also located near where the Joneses were located.
South of the Indian?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
All had life jackets, right? Or just the child?
The child certainly had one. I don't know the others.
So, Sheriff, explain again with the ping concept. Do we know, did the survivors say that they tried to make a phone call?
There was no distress phone call. That seems to be very clear. There was a routine phone call sometime between 8 and 9, 8 a.m. and 9, and the wife said there was a lot of noise in the background. They may have been, I would suspect, they were boating at that point. It was hard to hear. It was not a distress call. It was just to check in.
Okay.
Kind of a phone call. There never was, to our knowledge, and we're pretty certain about this, there never was a distress phone call. So the pinging, the phone call, all of that would have been very routine, and everything stops right after 9 a.m., which is consistent with that boat being submerged and the cell phones being ruined.
Is there any type of training given to deputies about what to do in a situation like that, as far as if your boat goes down in the Marine Patrol?
You mean for surviving tips, survival
Yes,
tips?
yes.
Yeah, well, there's some very good techniques for surviving for long periods of time in the water. Drown proofing is the term used. Basically, getting over on your back, getting the heavy clothes off, putting your arms out, and just trying to float upside down. You know, you try to put yourself in the place of the victims in this case. 1 minute you're fishing, the next minute you're in the ocean, the boat's underneath you. You know, if you hadn't trained for it or thought about it, you're desperate trying to hold on to that boat. The boat is not going to help you at that point. Really, your best bet is to flip over on your back and have a life preserver on, of course, That really helps.
Is that how they were found? Had they taken their clothes off?
I don't know.
Was the boat equipped with an E-perb or anything?
We don't think so. Right now, there's no indication that it was. For those of you that don't know, that's a GPS device that activates when it hits the salt water.
Did how far, do you know how far out the boat may have began taking on water?
So far, just going by what our survivor says, they went about 80 foot of water, so they were a few miles offshore.
And did he presumably say he swam back?
Yes. He said that he just stayed, actually the boat came ashore too, so I'm not sure how long he would have stayed with that boat, but at some point he said he felt the sand, crawled up on the beach, passed out, fell asleep, I'm not sure. Then he heard our helicopter and actually waved, and the helicopter saw him, picked him up, and took him to a place where fire rescue could transport him. He's still in the hospital. He's in stable condition.
The boat belonged to the Joneses or
The boat belonged to the deceased.
Do you know how long he was with the sheriff's office?
My understanding from their person who came up this morning, sometime under 2 years. I think you'll have his picture.
Yeah. But he was with Miami for much longer, down in Miami-Dade.
He was in Miami, yeah.
Sheriff, can you talk about that? I mean, living in Florida, we're surrounded by water. We have covered too many of these boating tragedies. How much more difficult is it when it involves a child and a law enforcement officer?
You know, what I said this morning is our sole reason for getting up every day is to preserve life. And that's what we do. I mean, our job is to protect and to save life. And no one life has any more value than any other life. It is particularly painful to see a 9-year-old on the beach. I've done it myself in my career. My deputies have done it. That's very painful. The fact that we had a fellow deputy die is additionally painful. But their lives are exactly worth what the other lives on the boat were. I've talked to Sheriff Bradshaw personally and expressed my condolences. I'm very sorry. I'm sure I can identify with him. You know, if it was me getting a call from Sheriff Bradshaw that one of my deputies and family members had drowned, it would be profound. We're a smaller agency than them. You know, another thing that's occurred just recently, which I find very sad, is the Florida legislature took it upon themselves to radically change safety inspection laws and make it so that one inspection by law enforcement is a lifetime inspection for that boat. And that once we inspect it, we can never go on that boat again and check it, which flies in the face of reason, because you might have your life preservers one day and not have your life preservers the next. You may have 3 people on the boat and 3 life preservers, and the next day you have 5 people on the boat and 3 lifesavers. And I'm not saying that law, of course, is not even in effect. It has nothing to do with this case, but I think that this is really an illustration of just how dangerous the position the Florida legislature put the public in, and then how profoundly difficult it is made for us to enforce safety regulations. Well, thank you all very much. I know that it's a story that you're covering, and it's something that we live every day, trying to keep people alive out there and safe on the waterways. And I think it's a good warning to everybody in the boating community. Be extremely careful. Be careful that you don't overboat your experience, and to have all the proper life-saving equipment on there. Certainly transponders are a wonderful piece of equipment. Jenny,
Sheriff, the Hope Sound National Wildlife Refuge is a very remote area for many people that aren't familiar with it. You say that 2 of the bodies were found out there. How, not to be insensitive, but how did you get them back to, were they brought by boat? How did you transport them?
Well, we have ATVs, and we have 4-wheel, and we were able to get to the bodies and in a dignified and appropriate manner recover them. Thank you all very much.
Does the FWC want to make
Yeah, I
any
was just going to say,
comment?
sure, can we hear from the FWC about the next steps in the investigation and their role? That would be great.
Sure. So currently, we're working the boating accident investigation portion of the incident today. And our next steps are just really to try to piece together the puzzle and determine exactly what took place and resulted in the tragedy that occurred today.
what kind of investigative tools do you use? Will you rely a lot on the testimony of the one survivor, or?
Well, absolutely, that's going to be a considerable factor for us, the testimony of the survivor. We're going to look at weather conditions, we're going to look at boating experience, safety equipment on board. All of those things will be yet to be determined once we're able to recover the vessel and look at what happened.
The sheriff said that their investigation is based on what happened on land, that the survivor did give you a play-by-play of how this happened. Can you please tell us, to the best of your recollection, what happened out there?
Well, it's our understanding, again, just from the survivor statement, that the water started coming on the boat immediately when they stopped to fish. The subjects went into the water. The elderly subject, the elderly male, was the first one that went missing, and the father and the son were there with the survivor for a period of time, and at some point the father of the child drifted off, and the child was left with the survivor, and at some point was no longer able to stay with the boat at that time. The child was located with a life jacket on.
Did others have life jackets on?
I can't confirm that for you. We're still trying to work that out, and unfortunately I don't have that information for you.
For those of us that were out and about yesterday, it was an absolutely beautiful day. What was going on out there that would make the boat have to sink on a beautiful day like that?
Well, weather conditions are always a factor anytime you're on the water, and it was windy yesterday, so that's going to be a major part of our investigation. We're going to look at any mitigating weather conditions that were occurring. High winds, waves, direction of the wind will increase wave size. So those are all part of factors for the
You're
investigation.
saying the boat went under, or did it take on a wave, or what exactly did he say?
Well, I haven't spoken to them. Our investigators handling that. I'm just going to agree with what the sheriff already stated, that the boat sunk immediately and stayed under the surface of the water, and it took on water over the back of the boat.
What's your name?
My first name is Carol Lynn, Carollyn. Last name Parrish, Parrish.
I'm sorry, just to confirm, do you know how far out the boat went, how far out it was from the shore when it took on the water?
It's not confirmed. What we have right now is a direction of straight out the inlet. Unless, Sheriff, do you have any further?
That's what it appears, is the boat went straight out. We just don't know exactly how far yet.
And you talk about
East, I mean, maybe, we're just
I
trying to gauge
I
that.
wouldn't even want to guess on that because it's unknown. And that will be part of our investigation is, when we speak further to the survivor, to determine where they were intending to go fishing and where they stopped at.
Do you know how far out 80 feet deep is?
Excuse me. I'm sorry?
Do you know how far out 80 feet deep is?
I do not know.
Carolyn, I'm sorry, go ahead.
You talk about the people drowning as opposed to succumbing to hypothermia, or is that one and the same when the survivor told you the story or told your investigators the story? How does one drown if they can swim?
That's a great question. Again, we're going to have to make those determinations in the investigation. The one subject was wearing a life jacket, and that's what we know so far. Weather conditions factor in trying to stay with the vessel, and when the weather is bad and the winds are high and the waves are high, it's hard to necessarily hold on to the vessel at that time. So,
Did they hold on to each other?
I don't know the answer.
And as of this point, is it your understanding that there were no other witnesses, in terms of nobody saw them going out at 8 in the morning on Sunday from Sandsbury Park, or nobody?
Not that we've been able to determine, and just in the research we've done so far amongst the responding agencies, to include all the sheriff's offices in our agency, excuse me, we don't have any accounts of anybody calling in at this time, offering any witness statements, nobody that called in any distress calls. So that's, again, will be part of that investigation, looking at call logs and such for the different agencies.
Is there any video camera that monitors that inlet?
I do not know the answer to that. I'm not sure.
Do you want to get into just the captain's, observations as to, you have your family on board, you see sea states, and the captain's got to make decisions based on current conditions?
Well, and I think you summarized it right there. I think if you're going to recreate outdoors in any type of activity, you need to be aware of weather conditions, safety requirements, and those types of things. It really is, boating is an individual choice, and making sure that you're prepared to go out and recreate safely. So,
Well, how big was the boat? Do we know what kind it was?
we are showing it as a 1995 24-foot Sea Ray.
Pretty small.
Any other
Thank you all
questions?
very much, and we'll stay here if there's any individual questions, but we really appreciate you coming out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
very
Thank
much.
you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, that is Martin County Sheriff William Snyder and FWC investigators updating on the tragedy that's happened earlier today. 3 people dead in a boat that was taking on water, a fishing boat that took on